Welcome, everybody. Lovely to see you all. We'll get right on with it. I'm. Thank you for joining us. This is the inaugural Humanity at the Heart book club chat, um, and I'd encourage you to introduce yourselves to each other in the chat and include your contact details if you want to. I'm Brendan Martin. I'm founder of the social enterprise Public World, which for the last couple of decades has worked internationally to support public service reforms based on enabling and supporting the people who work in them to work with greater freedom and responsibility so that they can make the relationships with each other and with the people and communities they serve that are needed to co-create solutions. In 2015, we began a partnership with Buurtzorg of the Netherlands to introduce organizations to its very successful model of neighborhood care provided through self-managing teams. And trading as Buurtzorg Britain and Ireland for several years, we supported change in around 40 different settings. One second, just letting more people in. In around 40 different settings in health and social care and other sectors such as social housing. And that work produced a rich and growing body of knowledge about the barriers and challenges associated with making services more relational and workplaces more participatory. And we've captured that in our learning and development programs that we call Humanity at the Heart, which we continue to develop. That's also the name of the growing online community through which we link the many organizations and people with whom we've worked and widen the conversation to anyone broadly sharing our purpose and wanting to learn collectively. One feature of that community is a section called a book club, through which any of our members, there are around 400 at the moment, can draw the attention of the community to any book they think is relevant to our shared concerns. And there are a few books recommended in there already. Please take a look, and more will be added soon. So we thought it would be a good idea to begin a series of monthly events with an author. And as soon as I read Friends and Purpose by Maff Potts earlier this year, I knew I wanted to start this series of events with him. So I was delighted when he accepted our invitation. I'm very grateful, Maff, that you're here today in a very busy period, I know, for the Association of Camerados, which you founded. And I'm going to give you a chance to introduce yourself a little bit in a moment. But I'm also joined by Ellen Rickford, who I invited to be my co-facilitator today, because I knew that Maff's book, which is funny and moving, as well as being full of insights, she and I both think are very important. I knew it would really resonate with her. So many thanks, Ellen, also for joining us today. Would you briefly introduce yourself before we ask Maff a very basic question?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. So Ellen Rickford, my work is varied, but I would say that my role here is that I am an enthusiastic supporter of Public World and of the work of Maff Potts and the Association of Camerados and the book. And yes, as Brendan said, a lot of the themes and the stories in the book resonated with me a lot. As a result of my own life experience primarily, and what I've observed and the things that I feel I've learned, which I'm looking forward to sort of discussing and throwing some of that in. And I'm very intrigued by some of the inspiration for some of this work as a result of that. So I'm, yeah, really looking forward to discussing this all with you. Thank you for having me. And Maff, over to you to introduce yourself, though I imagine everybody here might have a bit of an idea who you are.
Well, I've just discovered that a very old friend of mine is on the call who I used to volunteer with in the crisis homeless shelters about 20 years ago, 30 years ago. God, anyway, don't we look young still, Suzanne? And lovely to see you. Yeah, that's kind of where it all started, actually, was those homeless shelters for crisis. But yeah, I've spent 30 years, I guess, working in social justice. 20 of those were in very traditional, very institutional charities, some of which I ended up running, including the homeless provision for the Salvation Army and things like that. So a lot of hostels, day centres, very traditional stuff. I'd advised the government for a bit back when Yvette Cooper was housing minister, and built a lot of homeless hostels for the government. So was very much part of the system, and then got very disillusioned with the whole thing, and started a movement in my bedroom 10 years ago called Camerados, which I'm chuffed to say is now all around the world. And I wrote a book about this thing I started doing 2 years ago, which was I sort of panicked about the perfect storm of pandemic, which made us all isolate, followed by cost of living crisis, so we could only afford to isolate, and a world where we spend most of our time with this. You put all that together, you add in a few culture wars and a few actual wars, you stir it all up, and basically I panicked about the fact that isolation was going to take us all down. And so I went out with a van and would turn up to neighborhoods unannounced and illegally put furniture on the pavement. And I would sit down with a newspaper, and people would come along and say, "What's this?" Because there'd be like a sofa and an armchair and a standard lamp and a coffee table. And I would say, "I don't know," as if I just found it as well. And then they would sit down with me and we just talk as equals. And I did that in about, well, it's heading almost to 100 pavements now all around the UK. And it's without doubt the single best thing I've ever done with my career. And it's the most fun I've ever had, the most joy. And I wrote about it. That's it, really.
Thank you, Maff. Ellen, have you got anything you'd like to say about the book before we charge into inviting other people to ask Maff questions?
I do. Yeah, I mean, gosh, I feel like I want to buy 1 million copies of this book and put it all over the London Tube. First impression. Because I think that the messages in there and the way that they are communicated are so important and so accessible, that the impact that it could have if it were to get into everybody's hands would be pretty spectacular and never more needed than now, for all the reasons that you've just gone through, really, Maff. It's a time where we have become very disconnected from each other. I put in my original LinkedIn about this post, I said in a time where you can check a box on your Uber app to tell your Uber driver not to speak to you, which is a thing now. You can just put a tick in the Uber app saying, yeah, don't talk to me, I don't want to talk to you. While everyone is, even by their own admission, I think, dying of loneliness completely, never more depressed, never more anxious, all of this stuff. Something's gone wrong, right? I think we can kind of agree on that. And the way that this was told through some of these stories was, I think, it communicated the point of what you're doing and the effectiveness of what you're doing, in a way that was very engaging and completely impossible to disagree with, which is quite skillful. And I think, part of that is the fact that it is just really working. So you're actually just describing things that happened, and those things that happened show very well that this is working because it is working. So yeah, I mean, it's quite impressive work, and I think it's very important. And one of the things that I was thinking throughout reading this book was, oh, this is, in some ways, it's reminding me of the world of recovery, right? Addiction recovery. And there have been moments in my life where I've met people who are really struggling, who are not fortunate enough, you could say, to have been afflicted by addiction. And therefore, I can't say, oh, you should go to a meeting, then you'll have a community around you, then you'll, this and that. And thought, God, I wonder if there's anything out there for people without a specific sort of direction for their pain, where we can provide them with that same experience. And that seems to be what you have done. And all through the book, I was thinking, God, I wonder if this has got anything to do with the world of recovery. And then, right, in maybe the second to last chapter, you mentioned that one of your inspirations for this movement was a world based around addiction recovery. So that was really interesting. Anyway, I could go on forever, but but I won't. I'll give everyone else a moment to talk. But yeah, suffice to say, I think the work that you're doing is very important, and that the book depicts it very well in a way that doesn't whack you over the head with it. It simply shows you picture after picture after picture, and your brain does the rest of the work, right? Which is to say, oh, there's something here. So yeah, that's my take.
Oh, that's nice. The Catholic in me immediately wants to say, who hated the book? Anybody not like it? But no, it's lovely. Sorry, I should get better compliments. I appreciate that. I'm really, really chuffed you got all that from it. And just to say that Alcoholics Anonymous absolutely is an inspiration. Not entirely. There were aspects of it which we've definitely not used and taken. And I know that there are some people who have a problem with AA, but for me, just on the very basic form of complete strangers come together and look out for each other, then they all hand the cup around, put money in it, it pays for the room, and we're done. And that's the whole transaction. There's an absolute beauty of it. And there could be 10 or 12 meetings happening within a mile of you tonight that you wouldn't necessarily know about. There's an absolute beauty and simplicity to it, but it's based entirely on people having each other's back and that peer-to-peer thing. And it's about the mutuality and being on the level. Similarly, Samaritans was an inspiration in the way that Samaritans don't judge. There's no fixing. So one of the Camerados principles is no fixing. That is just about one of the most confounding principles you could ever come across, especially if that person is wanting to take their own life or whatever, just being alongside them. I mean, that doesn't get much more confounding than that. And I thought that was very beautiful. That was an inspiration. There was lots of things that kind of inspired Camerados. Perhaps one of the biggest ones I mentioned in the book is a Serbian activist called Srđa Popović, who wrote a book which is much better than mine, and you should all buy it. And it's called Blueprint for Revolution. And it, I used to sort of slightly scoff at people who said there was a book that changed their life, but this certainly did mine. And his approach was, when you're in a oppressive totalitarian regime, you can find hope through being silly and having a laugh and making music and just the joy of that, whether you're under Soviet rule or whatever rule, the way they found hope and inspiration, that was a huge one for me. So Camerados is obviously, that's very important to us, to be human. You should be silly from now and again. And so that's a big one for us. So yeah, there were lots of different little inspirations. But I mean, the biggest inspiration is the people I've met, really. I mean, genuinely. I know that sounds cheesy, but everyone thinks the world is a bit of a bin fire at the moment. I'm not surprised. But the truth of the matter is the macro is very scary at a conceptual level. But I can tell everybody here that it's very hopeful on the micro level. So when you are like this, face to face with someone, and you're talking about cheese or football or biscuits or crisps or your kids or your mum, actually, I'm terribly hopeful because people are great. And I extend that to the man who sat down on the pavement in Luton, who was big friends with Tommy Robinson. Despite being a Muslim with Pakistani heritage, which surprised me, but he stands on the terraces of Luton Football Club with Tommy Robinson, and he knows the family. And it instantly just humanized the whole thing, and we had a conversation. I still didn't agree with the guy, but we weren't screaming at each other. And so I'm very hopeful when people are face-to-face talking about biscuits.
Thank you, Maff. Before I just want to name check a few people here that I know too. Several of you. Steve Cummins, who's joining us from San Diego in California, who's my fellow founder of Public World. Colin Talbot, who's one of our associates. Very nice to see you, Colin. And I'm hoping that one of your 343 books might feature in. I don't just mean the ones behind you. That's 343,000. I'm talking about the ones you've written. Maybe we'll do one of your books. I'd love that. Also, hi, Ali, my colleague, and very important and very much valued colleague, and many others. Lovely to see you all. And I want to say a big hi to Victoria Herriman, who also should take much credit for Maff's wonderful book, as she is the illustrator of it. Welcome, welcome, Victoria. Before I hand over to others to have a bit of a say, I just want to read out a section of the if I can find it here. If I can work out how to find it, I might have to do it from my phone. Yeah, I might have to. I'll tell you what, I'll come back to that. What I'll do for now, because I'll figure it out. I'm a genius with technology of all types, as you can tell. So I'll come back to the thing I wanted to mention and hand over to anybody who would like to ask Maff a question or make any remark they want to make about the book or about Camerados or anything that they'd like to speak to Maff about. Over to you. Put your hand up if you'd like me to come to you. Can I see a hand? Oh, Joe, thank God. You're in.
I can't help but leap in if there's a big silence. Maff, it's lovely to see you. Victoria, lovely to see you as well. It's nice to see you in Nottingham not that long ago. I love this book. I love my I'm a bit shit badge. I wear it as often as I can. And you've made my day actually, because I am worrying about some big stuff, and it's sometimes difficult to be vulnerable and silly in spaces of leadership where actually you're held to account for the way that you say things. I see the impact actually of Trump Vance discourse in some of the spaces I'm working in around gender equality, and people saying things that perhaps wouldn't have been okay to say out loud really not that long ago. So these kind of things weigh fairly heavily. But the minute I think about it, the minute I look at Victoria's drawings and I look at my badge or even my spoon from during COVID times with little googly eyes on that I brought to some of the online meetings, it just reminds me that this is why it's the perfect club to be discussing it. It is absolutely humanity that's going to win the day. And I'm a kind of, well, I like to think I'm a camarado. I've got the badge right. But I am a bit shit at it. I can't always turn up and do the stuff. I wanted to do something at my old university. I want to do something here, but you're right about not standing up and being counted. I like the bit about sitting down and being counted. Like it's not about fixing things. And I'm a recovering fixer. So trying to stop myself from thinking I need to be in this space, I've got a responsibility to future women researchers, blah, blah, blah. I don't. If I can show up with a packet of biscuits and be a bit silly and hope that it doesn't get slung back at me, I think that's what this book and what you and Victoria and the other camaradas have taught me. So another thing I hate is when people say less of a question, more of a comment, but I'm afraid that has been a question rather than a comment. But I just wanted to say thank you and fill a bit of space when nobody else was putting their hands up. So thank you, Maff.
Well, I appreciate that, Job, and your comments, questions, anything. We don't mind. It doesn't have to be a question. It doesn't have to be a comment. Just an observation or anything you like. It's Bob Willard Watts, who I can't quite see. Yeah, Bob, go ahead. You're on.
Thanks. Hi, Maff. I've known Maff for a while, but I have a question. Well, first, I think Ellen, what you were saying about the book not hitting you over the head, it really hammers home its message with no hammering at all. And I think that's because it's so simple at its heart. It's like friends and purpose is all you need to kind of be okay. And I wonder the sort of loneliness epidemic that we have and the telephone and the social media and how that, Maff, I wonder what your view is of whether there's a net benefit or a net negative to social media, because there is and you can meet people and you can have you could have a Facebook book group, you could have a whatever, you could get your street together via next door, but then there's the obvious negative kind of side to it, and I think I'm on the negative side. But then when I try to do things in the community that don't use it at all, nobody knows about it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's it. Thanks, Bob. I mean, I think it's a bit like, I'm sure when television arrived or radio, I mean, like it's here and it's part of our life. So it's about how we use it now, because it isn't disappearing. And I think we're probably in our teenage years with it in terms of we're not quite getting the balance right. And I hope we come out of our teenage years as a world and society and figure out how to get that balance right. I think it's net negative right now. I agree with you, because we haven't got that balance right. The main thing we haven't got right is how to talk on social media, really, in the sense that, classic example, lots of flags have gone up around my town this week. They're everywhere. And the local Facebook page is quite a scary place to be. It doesn't put you in a great mood. People on both sides. And I think it's not... the screen on our phone is quite like the screen on our car, the windscreen. So if somebody cuts you up in traffic, you go from 0 to volcanic like that. And I think you do the same with the screen on your phone. You would never talk to somebody sat beside you on a sofa the way you talk to them on social media. You just never would, in the same way as you would never talk to them if they were beside you and they cut you up on the pavement as you would as they cut you off in traffic. So I think it's a net negative because we don't know how to behave with it yet. And we're in those teenage years, is my feeling. It's not helped by people making it addictive, which is a real toughie for me. I really struggle with it. I think there is some positives, though, and I've met some wonderful people through it, and I've been able to spread our message with it. That is the case. And I've had some beautiful interactions from people who've read my book through it, I'll be honest, which has been hugely gratifying. Of course it has. But so the flag issue, just to point that out, I was asked to give a talk in my town recently, and we got everybody face to face. And I invited a local reform councillor to come, and he sat on the front row, and he brought a lot of reform people with him. And there was an awful lot of more left-leaning people in the audience too. And I tried to give a balanced evening, which was, I guess I gave both sides a hard time. No, but I was also quite warm towards both sides as well. But I was trying to get us to talk about the language we use. And actually what happened is we all ended up in the pub afterwards. And I had the Labour councillors and the Reform councillors all having a pint together and having a chat. And I genuinely felt hopeful. So I'm thinking of trying to get a public living room going in my hometown that based around, specifically around disagreement. Sort of a disagreement cafe, because I really believe if we could come off the screens and do it like this, person to person. Well, no, this is a screen. That was wrong. You know what I mean? Like face to face. I think we take a lot of the heat out of it. So yeah. Basically, my point is the state of discourse on social media makes it a net negative right now because we don't really know how to use it. That's my long answer. Does that make sense? Yeah. I just wanted to say to Jo, it's really lovely to see her, because the universe wants Jo and I to kind of cross like this, because we keep doing so, particularly as Victoria was doing a bit of activism in the streets of Nottingham with a sofa without me, and Jo walks past, and I love that. Isn't that great?
I love it too. I'm very happy to be in the same universe, Maff and Victoria, and at some point I'll do something more strategically helpful, but for now I'm just in the same universe.
Well, no, that's the thing I really wanted to comment on, which is we're a no compulsion movement, right? I've learned from my years of Catholicism, Jo, right? Okay, you don't have to come to church, love, okay, to be a camarado. Just use it in your daily life. No guilt.
Thank goodness. Thank you.
Steve, nice to see you and to jump in.
So, Brendan, you and Matt started off about, lapsed Catholics or atheist Catholics, because I'm sitting here on a Catholic school campus. It seemed appropriate to weigh in. But I wanted to ask Matt about listening and the process of listening. I'm here at the Kroc School of Peace Studies, and one of my colleagues in May of 2024 took 12 conflict mediation students on a train trip from Los Angeles to New Orleans, stopping in all those little towns that we here would call the red state towns, and having listening sessions. What do people believe? What do people think? And it was very productive and enlightening for the students and for the residents who found that not every Californian is totally crazy. But it was based upon respectful listening. I don't think social media can do that. I would add that one of the problems with social media that I see in the US is that it takes away people's ability to actually engage. So if people put out an angry tweet about Donald Trump or an angry tweet about some policy, they conflate their online statement to actually doing organizing. So I think it's both listening and then engaging. So I want to just ask you about those two elements. How do you listen better? And then how do you actually engage people to be active, not just posting a thought?
You're on mute, Maff.
Thanks. Sorry, I did that because at this time of night, my office building, the alarm goes off. I still haven't figured out why it does that. I just didn't want to disturb you all. Well, hey, listen, Stephen, I am always very keen to say that there's nothing sage-like about either me or Camerados. We're making this up as we go along. We've made nothing but mistakes in 10 years. I haven't a clue how to start a social movement. I'm very much the wrong person to do it. Like Joe, I'm a recovering fixer. My wife said I've started a social movement based on everything I'm shit at. Trust me, I have no answers, except that I find that when you have a space where you are liberated from the need of reaching an outcome, listening goes very well, because I'm not heading anywhere. You see, I'm not trying to head in the direction of a solution or an outcome, and it's actually quite a peculiar state of affairs, because all of us are, of course, inveterate fixers, and so when people start talking about their life, we all want to go, well, you know, what you ought to do is, and you know, or this happened to me, and you know, but actually, just kind of freeing yourself from the need to do that makes both you and them kind of feel quite free, and it flows from then on, and a pretty magical thing happens, which is kind of through conversation with no one particularly pointing it in any direction, some really quite marvelous ideas come up, you know, and it's that space, I guess. But you know, for 20 years, I would sit opposite people with a needs and risk assessment form, and I would head them in the direction of a solution that I thought they needed to head in. And that, you know, that apart from the fact I lost them immediately, and there's an expression that comes over people's faces when they know you're trying to fix them, and they disengage. So if you're just not doing that at all, that has been, for me, the single biggest gift of the listening. Engaging, I would say, is a similar kind of thing, but this is where Joe was mentioning this badge. I think in America you call them a button, and it's very popular, and it says, "I'm a bit shit sometimes," and people love this badge, and because when you see somebody wearing it, it's always the same reaction. People laugh and say, "Me too." If you had a badge which said, "I'm an outstanding success all of the time," people would probably move away from you on the bus. So one of the biggest gifts you can give people is showing that vulnerability and saying to them, "What would you do?" That is a fantastic way to engage people, because it's like an injection of purpose. And there's no bigger purpose than someone going, you know, I say in my book, I think I call the chapter "The 6 Most Powerful Words in the English Language." But they are, "Can you do me a favor?" And if you say, "Can you do me a favor?" to someone, everybody leans in and says, "Yeah, well, you know, yeah." And then there's that bloody alarm thing.
We can't hear it, Matt.
You can't hear it? Oh, great. Fantastic. So yeah, the engaging these, you know, asking someone for help, you know, I guess more asking more More asking, less telling. is a pretty good one, Stephen. Sorry, that's a very long-winded answer. I only give long-winded answers.
You've given me a great idea for a badge. I like the idea of wearing a badge saying I'm a fantastic success all of the time. Everybody who knows me would laugh their heads off when they saw me wearing that. Especially Ali, who's the next one to come in with a question.
Or maybe you could alternate between that and I'm fantastic at IT all of the time.
Perfect for Brendan.
And I know Brendan well, so I know I can get away with that. And I equally have things that
Get away with anything.
Yeah. So what do I want to say? I want to say this is the perfect antidote to my day, which has been online since about 7:30, working my way through a CQC registered application form, which is an absolute nightmare and makes me want to. Anyway, and I was one of those things where I was thinking, I don't have time for this. I really should be cooking the kids, thinking about what the kids are going to have for dinner and doing all the things I haven't done because I've sat online in front of a Teams call all day trying to complete an application form. However, I'm here, and in the first 5 minutes, I was pleased to be here. So thank you, Maff, Ellen and Brendan for your introductions and for that just already 5 minutes in of making me think, right, it was the right decision. But I think part of that goes with the fact that there is so much going on now. We are short of time. We have loads of distractions. Social media is a big distraction. And I think that's something to do with the fixing thing as well, that sometimes, and I know I do, and Brendan knows me well, I always feel like I have to, my husband says the same, do you always have to be doing something? Can't you just do nothing? And that point of you go somewhere, you have to finish something, you have to tick something, you have to achieve something, you have to offer a solution rather than just being. And that for me is one of the worst things about social media is there's no chance I see my kids are prime, they scroll the whole time, doom scrolling, I think they call it. And I just want to say no, but then I get told that's what they all do and da, 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 da. For me, so taking time out is great, and I think we don't do enough of that. There is so much putting us all in directions, and whether it's social media, news, and horror, and so on and so forth, just daily life. I'm going to confess I haven't read the book yet. That doesn't mean to say I won't read it, but I will do. And I know anything by Maffs is great. And what I will say is I have personal experience. I have experience of the living rooms, public living rooms, as Maff has set those up at events that Public World has held. And I've seen many of the other case studies and stories through the times I've got to know Maff through Public World. One of the ones I know, Maff, you've done, and I don't know whether that features in the book, is a hospital, or you might have done more than one at a hospital. And I know, and I'm appealing to you, Maff, here. My mum spent, I'm a carer to mum and dad, and I spent 3.5, close to 4 months in hospital with mum 2 years ago. And all I wanted was a public living room downstairs, somewhere in the corridor, in the open, somewhere for me to go. I wanted to see, literally, every day I was in there. Some days I was in there from 8 in the morning till feeding mum at 7:30 in the night. So that whole 10, 11 hours. I just wanted to be able to walk downstairs, sit on one of your sofas and just be. And I know if that had been there, somebody else would have been there with me. And it's making me really emotional now. That's hormones, can't apologise. And I just wanted to just have that environment because I know where you've set it up before. And that for me, Maff, would have transformed some of the time I had with mum in that hospital. And if we could find a way, because I'm sure you would have a sofa and your wacky chairs and tables in every town, in every hospital, if resources allowed. And if there was a way that we could do that, the world would be a better place. And that, yeah, like I say, for those that perhaps either haven't read the book or haven't seen too much of the public living room in action, yeah, I think vote for public living rooms everywhere. I really felt the need for one, and I would have benefited so much. So whatever we can do to support, encourage, speak to whoever, that hospital environment for me is a place where you can see written all over people's faces, especially when you've got relatives and loved ones in there for a long time. You can see that for me would just tick a massive box and really help. Instead, I ended up at the doctor's, talking to them about tablets things because I was broken in the process. So I'm getting really emotional, so I'm going to stop there now.
No, crikey, you've been through it. I'm so sorry. And that's really rough. How's your mum doing?
Yeah, she's at home now. Left hospital, unable to walk, and has carers, double up care 3 times a day. So never came out walking.
Oh,
and let's not go to that story, but yeah, what I needed at the time was just to sit and be with somebody. I'd walk downstairs, you know, the usual thing, you don't want to buy another coffee and just spending all your money on coffee and car parking, whatever. I just wanted to sit somewhere outside of the hospital ward. No, and I know somebody else would come along who was also in a similar position, and we would be able to just sit and say, and do
It's
you know what I want
always,
to say? Life's shit, isn't it? This is shit,
yeah,
isn't it? And I just wanted to say that, you
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
and to
It's always
acknowledge.
amazed me that waiting rooms aren't more like public living rooms, because I had kidney issue with my kidneys years ago, and I used to sit there in the renal unit, and I knew that everyone else around me had a kidney thing going on, and I thought, hey, we're all here and we all have the same thing going on, so why aren't we talking about it? We could be sitting here going, oh, what's with yours? But we don't, because waiting rooms are places where you sit on plastic chairs with strip lighting and vinyl flooring and staring in front of you. But we're all there and we've all got shit going on, so we could be talking about it. So I've always just, similarly, anywhere you go in a state of crisis, hospital, police station, council office, do they make you think cozy? Is that a word you think? Do they make you think the word comforting? Not really. It's like they go out of their way to make these places scary, in fact. You know, I always say you don't get fairy lights in a police station. Don't you get fairy lights in a police station? Children's hospitals are fantastic, because if you go to a children's hospital, they've got giraffes on the wall, and they've got, you know, monkeys, and they've got like soft toys. And then you walk through that door into the grown-up hospital and no giraffes. We don't get giraffes. And we don't, you know, why not? I want a giraffe in my hospital. It's a funny one, not an actual giraffe. That would be slightly strange, but you know, I mean, it's like these cold, clinical, scary environments that we create for humans. It's very odd, you know, and it's kind of part of the whole thing that I talk about in the book about when humans organize. That's the title of the chapter, in fact. But when humans organize, we just can't help but systemize, and as soon as we systemize, we dehumanize, and we take all the human out, which is why it's very important not to be too organized. And I know that's a bit of a challenge for everybody, but you know, if you're
Well, I
just
can take that in my stride.
well, you've got that nailed, Brendan, thankfully. But I just I can't remember. I think I say it in the book. I hope I do, because I ought to say to those of you who haven't read it, every alternative chapter is me kind of sharing an idea of things we've learned over the last 10 years. And yeah, one of them is just this idea of, if you must always keep things just a little bit crap, because then there's room for other people to contribute. And also it sends a message of people, oh, these guys haven't got it taped, kick off your shoes, relax. Whereas if you go into an environment that has to be perfect, I guarantee you that somewhere somebody is shouting at someone in a kitchen. You know, if you ever been to a community event, there's always someone really stressed, isn't there? Because it's just not quite right. Well, that's an awful vibe. So less shouting, more just be happy with it not being perfect. And then everyone can relax. It's really challenging. It's particularly challenging for high achieving people who love neatness and efficiency. But neatness and efficiency is the enemy of humanity, because there's no human in that. Why? Because humans are a bit crap. And you know, we've built an entire world and society on the logic model. I've actually just found it in the chapter, No Solution Revolution. That's the logic model, right? Identify the problem, issue an intervention, you know, problem is solved. And as I say in the book, the only problem with the logic model is it doesn't fit life. Because when is life ever ticked? It's like, oh, sorted. Everything's fixed. Everything's ticked. Well, that's not life, is it? Life is a surging mass of, it's like a wave, you know, forward, back, success, failure, you know, 2 steps ahead, 5 steps back. It's constantly rolling and changing and iterative. So if you're constantly demanding a tick on your life, you're going to be constantly disappointed and damaged. So embrace the mess. Be a bit crap. That's my feeling.
There you go, Ali. It was all deliberate. Me being crap all these years. Maff.
Can you just repeat that, because it might have to go on social media? Embrace the mess, something, the crap. What was it?
We're all a bit crap.
Nothing scares the life out of you when someone's chiseling your words onto a tablet. So I don't know what I said.
I'm not. I've handwritten that one liner down, and that's all I've done with that. That's it.
Actually, that gives me an opportunity to apologize for the fact that I should have asked you all if you were relaxed about us recording this, and indeed making the recording available to people who are not able to be here. And I forgot to do that because I'm a bit crap sometimes. And but we have been recording, thank God. At least I turned it on. And is it okay? Is everybody relaxed about that? So, Ali, you'll be able to get the exact words if you want them from that. Um,
Okay.
but
Brendan,
yes,
I think Colin might have a question.
yeah, I'm just about to bring Colin in. Colin, welcome. You're on mute, Colin. So yeah.
Yeah, just switched it off. Yeah, thanks very much for all this, Maff and Brendan. I think one of the issues which doesn't get discussed very much, and is a bit nerdy, but one of the reasons a lot of the things that Maff's talking about doesn't get discussed very much in public policy and public debates is because it's really hard to measure, basically. So you can't have a set of numbers like, GDP's gone up by 0.01% or something. Whoa, big headline story. There have been, though, and it's really, some of you probably heard this before because I'm always banging on about it. There have been some attempts to do some of this. Back in 2018, the Office for National Statistics carried out a study where the figures they used were from 2016, where they attempted to measure what they called unpaid household services, which is all the things lots of us do for friends and family, like doing their laundry for them, or ferrying them around in the car, or buying their food for them, or all the other collaborative and cooperative things that go on in society. And the figures are actually quite staggering. Roughly speaking, if what they did was just put a value on the equivalent commercial value on all of these activities based on surveys data of how much of this people do. And it turned out it was the equivalent of about 63% of GDP. 63%, nearly 2/3 of GDP, was unpaid, unrecorded activity. And this is just household activity amongst sort of immediate friends and family. It's not any of the wider stuff which goes on as well. And it's absolutely staggering. And we saw it. It sort of surfaced briefly during the pandemic when people were asked to volunteer. And I don't know what it was like in your areas, but here, where I live in Bedford, there was just a whole load of spontaneous organising going on. Some of it through existing associations like churches and Gurdwaras and so on. Some of it just people on our estate. We set up a Facebook page and people started collaborating on that to help out and so on. So I think one of the issues is whether or not we can actually put some of that into the public domain and point out how vital that actually is to the functioning of the formal economy. Because, the parents that take their kids to work in the morning are just as important as the buses that are being provided or the private taxis that are being provided, but none of it gets registered. Just one other thing, partly in response to Ali's points. I mean, one of the problems we've lost, and I take your point, Maff, about dehumanising scales of organisation, is that starting in roughly the 18th century, 19th century, we started making everything big. So we had big hospitals, big prisons, and occasionally you get a glimpse. I lived in Monmouth for a while, and we were really lucky. We had a cottage hospital in Monmouth, and it was fabulous. It was exactly the sort of place you're talking about. It was pretty informal. It didn't have all the sort of super duper equipment, but it didn't need to, because you could ship people to Abergavenny or somewhere else where there were bigger hospitals if they needed it fairly quickly. And it was a fabulous facility. The other thing I'd mentioned around Ali's point is some places, Canada's been doing this a lot, have been experimenting with building hotel-like facilities, either as part of the hospital or renting hotels next to the hospital and using them for people who are in long-term care that are not likely to need acute interventions. So they can get nurses there if they need to, but they're actually providing a much more domestic environment and making it easier for friends and family to look after the people that are there. There's lots of things we could do like that, and we're just not considering it. And instead, most of the time we're just looking at building bigger and bigger institutions in the name of efficiency, and actually they usually aren't that terribly efficient because they just become too complicated when they get too big. Sorry, that's my rant.
Thanks, Colin.
Oh,
Matt,
brilliant.
any observations following that?
That was brilliant. I mean, yeah, that's the other obsession: growth and scale, and what you lose as a result. I often believe that the further that decisions get away from the people that the decisions affecting, and that you knowing their names, the less informed those decisions are. So, which is why, really we should be pushing decision making nearer to people who know somebody's name. I think and you lose that, of course, when you get to scale. And Colin, I mean, you're an academic, so I'm getting very insecure now and inadequate in front of you. But I'm feeling that the Industrial Revolution it's that move to cities away from village life. I mean, you've got to be a little bit careful of that because you can become a bit sort of rosy-hued about village life, and things were always better then, and they weren't always better. But I do think that scale issue, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. One of the oldest social justice organizations is the YMCA, and that was founded because people were moving to cities away from villages, and their parents were worried about them. So they would set up these young men's Christian associations where they could get together in industrialized cities and read the Bible together. And that's where the YMCA came from, and this idea of a sanctuary within industrialized towns. But yeah, I do believe that the lack of local. I mean, it's really interesting that, isn't it? Scale and growth is built into us as well when we want to make a difference in the world. So I remember meeting with a whole group of young social activists from around Europe, and they'd won this scholarship to come to Britain and be social change agents, or whatever jargon they were using at the time. And they were like, Maff, what can we do to make the biggest difference in the world? And of course, naturally, I said, well, you help the people at the bottom of your hill, your own hill. Because if we all did that, it would be great. And I think there needs to be more kudos in doing great things for your community. I don't know if have any of you heard the Holly McNish poem that's been doing the rounds lately? She's a young woman poet who basically, if you don't know how you feel about things, just go and listen to what Holly McNish says, and she's probably right. And her poems are amazing. And she talks about, if you really want to get back control of your country, go and help at the family centre. The Scouts need some volunteers. The football team's a bit short of someone running the line this weekend. You can get stuck in. There's plenty of stuff. I think there's 280,000 unconstituted bodies in this country, people who put white lines on football pitches at 6 a.m. on a Sunday and do not get paid. Interesting point you made about the unpaid thing. A friend of mine, Michael Little, has just written a paper about carers. And I think they have put a figure, haven't they, on people who care for family members. And it is billions and billions, isn't it? I wish I had the figure at my fingertips. But that's what it's saving the NHS. No, I absolutely... if only we put a value on it. If only we put a value on it.
Thank you very much, Matt. I don't know if I said at the beginning that we intended to finish this at 10 to 5, and it's 10 to 5. So we're going to finish. I'm delighted to say I've not been able to ask either of the questions I had prepared, and I'm not going to ask them now. What I am going to say, though, is I have been multitasking, and so has Bryony Shannon during this session, just briefly, because at the beginning of this session, I didn't know who was going to be the author that we were going to make our victim for the second of these sessions, which will be at the same time, 4 o'clock on October the 21st. We're going to make a pattern of it being the second to last Tuesday in the month. And I'm delighted to say that Bryony, who's just published a book called Rewriting Social Care, has agreed to be our author on that day. So thank you, Bryony, and we'll be talking to each other soon and promoting both her book and the event on the 21st of October. So I'm going to close it now. I'm going to close it by thanking you all for coming. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for letting us record it. We'll work out what to do with that in the next few days. Thank you to Ellen for your inputs, which have been really nice, and our preparations together have been very enjoyable. And above all, thanks a million to Maff, not just for making the time today when I know you've been very busy, but also for writing such a brilliant book about such a brilliant initiative that you have taken. You've, in both respects, the work you've done and the book you've written are very inspiring to me personally, and I think pretty obviously to others who are here, and many, many more who are not. So I'm going to close there and thank you all, and see you, I hope, next time when we'll be doing this again with Bryony.
Thanks very much. Lovely to meet you all, and thanks for all your comments.
Thank
And
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
I really appreciate you coming. Thank you. Lovely to see you. And I hope your mum gets better, Ali. Take care.
Brandon.
See you, Steve. Do you want to stay on? See you later.
Sure, for 1 minute, couple minutes, sure.
No, there's no need, but we can chat in some other time.
No, I just want to know where Cleo is.
Oh, Cleo's upstairs. Cleo's our cat, Maff. We just adopted a cat 9 days ago, and she, on Sunday, after a week confined in one room, we started letting her around the house, and she's now decided that the top spare bedroom in our house is the perfect place to spend most of her day.
Oh,
There's
wow.
a bed in there. It's comfortable. Nobody pesters her. That's where she is.
Excellent. Excellent.
And Matt, thank you from a long distance. I look forward to reading your book, and I really appreciated what you shared. I think it was a real tonic in what we're going through right now.
Thank you, Stephen. We have very many Camerados in the States. We have public living rooms in all sorts of places, Boston, Virginia, Milwaukee, you name it. And we're in touch with a lot of Camerados in America who are going through a bit of a time. I'm pleased to say that they're finding the public living room is helping bringing people together, which is great. But it is a challenge, and I'm not saying it isn't. I find it very challenging.
I really like what you said much earlier about people's faces going through a certain look when you're about to tell them what to do with their life.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it used to happen when I was a sort of professional, sort of key worker type person, because I would have a conversation with them about their football team or whatever, and we'd be having a lovely time. And then, of course, I'd bring the conversation round to what I was there to talk to them about, and the tone shifted, and they just were reminded that actually I was paid to talk to them, because I had to get a support plan. And that expression used to kill me every time, because they would think, oh, we were having such a lovely chat, but actually you're not my friend, are you? You're a professional who's trying to fix me. And it's an awful expression. And so in many ways, I wanted to create Camerados so that we never have to have that expression. We can just stay talking about the football team, and that's fine, because connection is enough.